This is one of the ozone units that I build for a company called Reclaim Filters and Systems. I'll put a link to their website in the show more of this video if you're interested. Now I start by making up the cells. What I'm doing here is I'm brushing the cement into the grooves, making sure that all the grooves are filled with the cement, and this also helps to eliminate bubbles, which would be not good. If there's not enough cement in the grooves, or there's small bubbles in there, the cell could leak. So this takes a little while to do, but definitely worthwhile to make sure that it's right. And now it's time to screw it into the cell. And it needs to go in all the way down. So little pliers will help here. That way I can get it screwed down all the way. And of course now it's time to do the other side. And we repeat this process, making sure that the grooves are filled with the cement. Then we screw this one in on the other side of the cell. And again, we'll be tightening it up with the pliers, or wrench in this case. And then the cell has to sit for a while for the cement to set up. But this is the process, and I have at least 9 more to make. While all the cells are curing, I'm going to start making up the harnesses for the ozone units. And here's the workbench where I do that. And here are the go-bys. Here I'm measuring the wires, looking at the go-bys. And of course I'm going to cut it to the correct length. And now I'm going to crimp on a pin. Just hold the pin, and then using the crimp tool, mash the pins down, and it's connected. Now I have 2 of those, and they slide into the socket here, and this part of the harness will plug into the circuit board. Now the other end of this gets this type of connectors, and I've got, of course, another tool to crimp this connector, and this will slide onto either the micro switch or a pressure switch. Now here's both ends of this harness. Now here are all the harnesses for one ozone unit. All the way to the left, that is the harness for one side of the pressure switch, and the other end will go to the micro switch for the door. Then the next one over, pretty much the same thing. One side will go to a pressure switch and the other side will go to the door. but also it plugs on to the board. Then the next harness over, that is the power harness. Then the next one over, we've got two harnesses there. That's for the LEDs. Then the last one all the way to the right, that is our thermal harness. Here I am beginning to populate the cabinet. I'm installing the red LED holder, and I'm making sure that it's in all the way. And here's the green LED holder. And I'm checking to make sure that there's no gaps, that both are properly installed. Now the LEDs, we put some super glue on them and then plug them into the appropriate red or green holder. As you can see here, we have the LED holders in place, the on and off switch, and also the flow meter. Here is the other side of the door, and you can see the same things but a little bit more. I have installed the connections to the flow meter, and that brown thing that's sticking off to the left of the bottom of the flow meter, that is the pressure switch. You take a little small tube about an inch length and plug that on top of that, then you shove both of those in and tighten it up, and it works really good. No leaks there. Now obviously I have shortened this up quite a bit, but because you can see the tape that I use, and it just takes a while to do this because it's easy to cross thread. So rather than spending hours and hours on it, I thought I'd just show you the results. And here I have installed the fan. Now it's time to install the cell. It just takes 2 bolts and 2 nuts, and it gets installed like this. It's hard to see, but there's a connector, and that's at the top, 2/3 up. The copper tube, there's a connector there. That's the top of the cell. This is for the power supply. We need 6 standoffs and 12 screws. And the screws that go on the bottom of the standoffs will have Loctite on them. Here I'm installing the screw, and I'm going to get a standoff and screw it on, and then back it off just a little bit so it can wobble a little bit. And we've got 5 more to do. And these screws are the ones that have the Loctite on them. Here all the standoffs have been installed, and our power supply comes in a static bag. This is the power supply here, and to save time I have installed the power supply. Now it's time to hook the power supply up to the cell. I usually do the ground first. It screws on like this. Then the other end is usually too long, so I cut it off just a little bit and connect it to that connector that I was talking about a little bit earlier. That's about 2/3 the way up the cell. Now the power supply is hooked up to the cell. Now it's time for the power harness. And here I've hooked up the power cord plug. That'll be installed. And here's the other end coming through the wall. And here I've made a little bit more progress. And you might wonder, why are the wires so long? Well, this harness is also used in the K2. What I'm building here is a K1. The K2 has 2 cells. This one has 1 cell, and it's a smaller cabinet. So we build one harness for both units. And here's another look at how that power cord is attached. It just plugs on to the circuit board. Now it's time for the micro switch. And here I have installed it and plugged the wires on. Those were those white wires right at the very beginning that I made. And here is what it looks like right now. Looks like a rat's nest, doesn't it? But I need to do a little testing. The wires that are coming off the door, I need to make sure that they are going to move properly when I close the door. And that's what I'm doing here. See the wire that's coming from the door? I'm making sure that it falls in that direction and it doesn't hit the micro switch. As you can see, I've made more progress here. That wire that is coming from the middle of that bundle to the left side of the board, or in front of the board, that's for the fan. Now here's a little more progress. I have installed the LED harnesses. You can see that they're connected on the LEDs, and there's 2 more connections on the board. And there's 1 more harness, and that is the thermal. It gets put into the cell, and of course the other end gets plugged in on the board. And now the wiring is complete. Now it's time for tubing. I have installed the brass fitting at the bottom. That's our oxygen input. And here you can see that I have attached a plastic hose to that fitting on the inside. This material, you can heat it up with a hot air gun, and when it's warm enough you can just shove it on and it'll make a nice seal. It won't leak there. Then here I have shoved a slightly smaller piece of tubing in it and clamped it. There'll be no leaks there. And the other end of that tubing goes over to the bottom of the flow meter, and also our pressure switch. Now at the top of the flow meter, I tubed up another one that goes from there to the top of the cell. And here I've installed the OZONE output. It's stainless steel. And I have connected the smaller tubing to it. And it loops around and fits in the bottom of the cell. So that is the last step. And now, if everything is okay, I'll do a pressure leak test, make sure that there's no leaks, and then we'll start setting up the power supply. I've got the unit hooked up to our unit that's on the wall there, and I'm going to make an adjustment. We want to get that current up for our K1 to about 0.9. And this takes a little while to do because it takes a while for all the components, the cell and the components on the board, to heat up and stabilize. And we're getting pretty close to 0.9, but this will take a little while. Well, I got the unit adjusted, and now we start making some more checks. For instance, here, the corona that's at the bottom of the cell. Here's another picture so you can see it a little bit better. Close the lid just a little bit, and you can see the corona that's pushing out just a little bit past the end of the copper. Here's another test. The unit's on, and I'm going to lift the door up a little bit, and you see the red light comes on and goes out. And also when I pull the oxygen hose off, and the green light starts blinking. So those are the last two tests. We now have completed one unit. So now it's time to put the stickers on the unit. Here's the oxygen and ozone, and our serial number. And then we make a box for it and put it in the box, and then we're done. Thanks for watching.